Hey guys, welcome back to Bridgewater Student Ministries. My name is David, and I'm really glad that you are here today. Today we're continuing our series called Giants Must Fall, looking at some of the giants in our lives that have a way of holding us back from all that we want to be, and really all that God has called us to. So far we've talked about fear and rejection, and today we're going to tackle one that might seem a little bit strange to you. We're going to be talking about the giant of comfort. Now, comfort might not be something that you would classify as a giant that's in your way and attacking you, but the reality is that comfort is a giant many, if not all of us, deal with pretty much all the time. Today, I hope to help you see the giant of comfort in your life and to help you learn how Jesus can slay that giant in our lives. Comfort is defined as a state of physical ease and freedom from pain or constraint. And as human beings, we long and strive for comfort. We want to be free from pain, for things to work out, for things to be easy, for things to work out nicely for us. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a good desire. The problem is that we live in a sin-stained world that is not all that God created it to be. Because of sin and its effects on the world, life is not always comfortable. We have to deal with pain and hardships in this life, and so complete comfort is just not going to be possible. Jesus said it this way in John 16:33. I've told you all this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart, because I have overcome the world. That desire for comfort within us is actually a desire for heaven. Within all of us is a desire for things to be at peace, to be right in the world, and that will not happen until we are with God for eternity in heaven, and He makes all things new. And so again, that desire for comfort is actually a good thing. It's just misplaced if we are thinking we're going to fully satisfy that desire here in this life on this earth. Jesus said that on earth we will have trials, we will have sorrows, but even in the midst of that, we can have peace knowing that He has overcome the world. Comfort becomes a giant in our lives when we let it become a ruling desire that blocks out other important things that are actually far more important. I know I can let comfort keep me from getting out of bed in the middle of the night to help my wife with our son, from having that difficult conversation that really does need to happen, from greeting that new person at church, and so much more. Comfort can be a giant in my life far more than I would like to admit, and I think that can happen for many of us. This happened to Peter in Matthew chapter 16, and so let's go there, where Jesus is going to give us three things that we should choose over comfort. Matthew chapter 16, starting in verse 21. From then on, Jesus began to tell His disciples plainly that it was necessary for Him to go to Jerusalem, and that He would suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but on the third day He would be raised from the dead. But Peter took Him aside and began to reprimand Him for saying such things. Heaven forbid, Lord, he said, this will never happen to you. Jesus turned to Peter and said, Get away from me, Satan. You are a dangerous trap to me. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's. Then Jesus said to His disciples, If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? For the Son of Man will come with His angels in the glory of His Father and will judge all people according to their deeds. Jesus begins to tell His disciples the reality of what must happen soon, that He is going to suffer and He's going to die. Peter doesn't like that, and he begins to reprimand Jesus, and Jesus responds with this teaching that really helped them and us better understand what the mission was that He came to earth for, and the mission that He's calling His followers into. See, Jesus didn't come to make our lives more comfortable here on earth. He came to earth to suffer and to die on the cross, to pay for our sins. And when we make Him our leader and our forgiver, our lives are no longer about us or about our comfort. They're about following Jesus, about taking up our cross and doing as Jesus did. And so here's the first choice that Jesus is calling us to. to choose Jesus over comfort. Jesus said that if we are going to follow him, we need to pick up our cross. And a cross is an instrument of torture and death. It's not designed to be comfortable. In fact, quite the opposite. And so Jesus is saying, if you are going to follow after me, you have to forsake comfort. You have to pick up your torture device and follow in my footsteps. Now, Jesus is not necessarily saying that we need to literally give up our life, though that could be required of some of us. He is saying that we need to, like him, forsake all things the world has to offer and instead make our life about following Jesus and doing what he calls us to. This is closely tied to the second choice that Jesus says we need to make, and that's to choose life over comfort. Jesus says that if we try to hang on to our life, we will actually lose it. But if we give up our life for his sake, then we will save it. In other words, if we try to make our life all about us, what we want, what's going to make us comfortable, what the world says will be good, getting what we want when we want it, we're going to end up losing it all. But if we instead give up our life, if we choose to follow Jesus and make our life about what he says is important, then we're going to find a better life. If we make our lives all about comfort, we might find some physical comforts for a time, but in the end, we're going to lose all of the things that really matter. And so Jesus is saying, choose life, real life, over comfort. Well, finally, we must choose reward over comfort. Jesus says, what good is it if you gain the whole world and you lose your soul? In other words, what kind of reward do you really get if you achieve all the things the world has to offer? The world has nothing to offer you that is going to prove to be worth it in the end. So Jesus is calling us to take a longer view and work for rewards that will actually last, that will actually be worth it. He says in verse 27 that he is going to come and judge all people according to their deeds. And so as followers of Jesus, we are going to answer for how we lived. Did we make our lives about ourselves, our comfort, our happiness, our ease? Or did we make them about Jesus? When we make our lives about Jesus, we will gain eternal rewards that will be worth the sacrifices that are required to get there. This reminds me of a quote that I think might help us take this home. The longer view you take, the better decisions you make. The farther into the future that you look, the better decisions you will make today. And Jesus is calling us to consider eternity in our decisions, because the reality is that you and I will exist for all of eternity. This life is so short, and Jesus is calling us to invest our short lives on this earth to gain greater rewards in heaven. Will we lose some things here on earth? Sure. But we will gain much better rewards in heaven that we get to enjoy for much longer. The decision to invest in eternity is clearly the logical one, but it is always the harder one, because it requires denying ourselves what we want in the moment so that we can get what we really want more in the long run. I think the greatest regret any of us will face is standing before Jesus, knowing we lived too safe, too comfortable, too much for ourselves. But we will never regret choosing to sacrifice our comfort for the sake of following Jesus. Now, if you're here and you're not a follower of Jesus, then these choices are not going to be something that you want to make. And listen to me, that's totally valid. But I do want to encourage you to consider the invitation of Jesus to find a better life than what this world can offer you. Your leaders would love to talk with you about the better life that Jesus offers, both now and into eternity. Well, thanks again for joining us today. Have a great week.